If you're going to want to compete in the DBT11 format, you are going to need to know this deck. I just put a deck box in front of you. You don't even know what the deck is. I open it and you find out it is the goat herself, Minerva. So if you're a YouTube channel member, you've already seen a bit of this deck in action as I've uploaded some early gameplay from a first-person perspective. But today we're actually going to be taking a deck profile look at Minerva, which is one of the best decks to come out of set 11 format because of two very big cards that supported this deck. One of them being, of course, one of the promos that came out during that month's shop tournament, as well as the very important new double rare that basically fixes one of the biggest issues the deck ever had and also provides just additional draw power, and of course we always like that. So in today's video we're going to take a look at the Minerva deck. I'm going to put it to the side here as we break down the deck. This is the first time I actually look at it on the channel outside of Deer Days, so I think it'll be pretty fun. So starting off, we have the starter, which is Bibid Rabbit. It's the Genesis unit, pretty important, don't use other starters. Then we have the grade 1 Melissa, who says when she is ridden over by Genesis unit, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and then choose up to 2, put them into the soul, and shuffle your deck. So usually you want to soul charge your other soul pieces, that you want to either soul blast out to get bonus effects that do something from being in the soul, or things like that, or just in general cards that are on your triggers basically as well. So that's pretty good. Then we have the grade 2 Chamomile. Chamomile, of course, has the same effect when you ride over her. You get to look at top 5, put 2 into the soul, and then shuffle. Keep in mind that in this version of the deck, this is the last time you shuffle. After you ride over Chamomile, you don't shuffle anymore, so keep that in mind. And then when she is put, when both of these cards, they both have a second effect, but I guess Melissa's the only copy, so we should talk about it now. So Melissa's other effect is when put from soul to drop, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, not Genesis or Regalia, it has to be Minerva, so don't use this when you're in grade 2, then you can call her to back row rearguard circle, and if you did, you may soul charge 1. So the soul charge 1 isn't compulsory. And then Chamomile says when she's put to drop from soul, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, count +1 to call her. So she can be called to the front row as well, and that's why we're going to be running more copies of Chamomile. And finally, the boss card Minerva. Just as strong as she used to be back in the day, Minerva says during your turn, if you have a Regalia grade 3 in your soul, all of your front units get plus 5k power. And this is a multi-attack deck, that plus 5k is going to be pretty huge over the long run. Then she says Soul Blast 1, look at the top card of your deck and put it either on top of your deck or into your soul. So if it's a trigger, you can leave it on top. If it's a normal unit, you can soul charge it, and then that way you have more soul to use for your abilities, such as her third one, which says at the end of the battle as she attacked, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, you can count +1 and Soul Blast 3, and then choose one card from your hand that has the Genesis clan, which you see here at the very bottom, and discard it to stand her, and she loses a drive. So this is a Vanguard restand deck, of course, an Overlord-like, if you will, but of course, because of the fact that they Soul Blast and you have cards like this that work off being Soul Blasted, it's a pretty intense multi-attack deck that also pluses quite a lot. So Minerva is honestly very interesting and also very rewarding to play because it's actually it's quite intricate, and there's a lot of things to kind of keep in mind as you play it. So of course we are running max Persona rides with the extra 3 copies of Minerva. Shouldn't be too big of a surprise here either. And then we have our other grade 3 Regalia to help get that pulse AK from Minerva's effect, which is the Angelica. So Angelica's been around for a while, and she's a countercharger of the deck. So Angelica says at the end of the battle that she attacked, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1 and give your Vanguard plus 5k for that turn. Full stop. So that means you can stop that effect there. You can just Soul Blast 1, give the 5k, and not do anything else. But if you choose to then put her to soul, you can countercharge 1. So if you don't have anything to countercharge and you don't want to call anything else, right, you can just soul blast 1 to give the plus 5k and then make your Vanguard stronger. But usually you're using her to put her to soul, and that way Minerva's plus 5k effect goes active because you have a grade 3 Regalia in the soul, and on top of that gets you countercharge, and this is a pretty CB intensive combo deck, so the countercharge is really important. That means you can soul blast a Chamomile for her effect, and then she will immediately refund the cost of Chamomile as well. So that's super important, and we like that quite a lot. And now we get on to our first of the new cards, which is the Say Sus. So Say Sus is the shop tournament promo, which was quite hard to come by. It was a pretty expensive promo here in Japan especially. It's starting to drop off now as Minerva's kind of starting to stabilize a little bit and not be as much of a tier 1 deck and more of a tier 2 deck. But basically this card says when placed on a rearguard circle, if you have a Genesis clan Vanguard, so you can use that effect on turn 2, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one, put it to soul, put the rest in the bottom deck in any order. So that means that if you call this after turn 3, you will not be able to shuffle whatever you put to the bottom. I have once in a tournament looked at top 3, seen 3 heal triggers, and just I was just like, well, that's it. Like, I've never seen those heals, that's it. But the second effect is honestly the best part of this card, which is at the end of all attack, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, so don't use it on grade 2, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit to choose a card from your hand or drop, put it to your soul, and if you put a card from hand, you may draw 1. So if you have a bunch of Camomiles and other cards clogged up in your hand, you can of course exchange that, but otherwise, after you've called out your Camomiles and you need to put them back into the soul in order to use them again, as you used to do with Drilling Angel, this now takes Drilling Angel's spot while also enabling more Camomiles, because you can Soul Blast 1 and retire him to then Soul Blast the Chamomile for the cost, and then you use his effect to first put another Chamomile from your drop into the soul, and then that one you Soul Blasted gets the CB1 and call herself out. So you get to do some cool combos and also recur your pieces, and he also helps you fill up the soul, but I kind of prefer to call it on like turn 2 for that actual search effect in case I put any big triggers to the bottom. Now, a card you might not be expecting to be played in Minerva, but it's really good in Minerva, which wasn't, like in the initial list in Minerva, wasn't played as much, but then people caught on to how good it is and then started playing it, is 4 copies of Spiral Cutie Angel. This card has been like a staple in every single counter deck. She is a grade 2 cycle card. So she says, when discarded during the right phase, you can Soul Blast 1 and put it to bot deck to draw 1. So that's because it's a piece reliant combo deck. It actually doesn't really have that much of a hand as well, because you're often just like, you know, putting down your cards in order to use them as combo pieces. So this draw is really good. And when placed on rear, if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counterblast 1 to look at top 2, put 1 to hand, put the rest on top or bottom of the deck in any order. So you were able to essentially plus from both the right phase skill as well as from the, you know, from the Persona Ride activation skill. And on top of that, you can also stack triggers on top of your deck, not just through Minerva skill anymore, but also through her as well. So if you have the spare CB, keep in mind this eats into the CB of your actual combos, which you need quite a lot for, but it can be good every so often. But most importantly, it's for that when ditched in the right phase skill. And then we do play 3 more copies of Chamomile because of her Rearguard Circle, you know, pop out effect, so her soul effect that puts her on the Rearguard Circle. Very important. She is like your best multi-attack piece that you want to keep recurring and keep drawing into. But in my opinion, the card that actually saved this deck and made it into a tier 1 deck is none other than Rerelim. So Rerelim is an insane card that we must play as a 4 of, which is the double rare from set 11, and she says, when placed on Rearguard Circle outside of the battle phase, if your Vanguard is a Genesis, so this can work on grade 1 or 2, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1 to draw 1, choose a card from hand, reveal it, and if it's the same grade or lower than your Vanguard and it's a unit card, you can call it to rear, if not, you discard it. So that is Karubre. That is the grade 2 Karubre already on a card, and there's still more of an effect. So this is basically like a god combo with Chamomile, because you can CB1, Soul Blast 1, and then call a Chamomile from hand, and then make this column. And on top of that, you're also drawing cards, which is really good. But the reason why we want to call Chamomile is because that's second effect, because at the end of the battle that she boosted, if your Vanguard is a Genesis, so again, works on grade 2 or 1, you can put her and the other rearguard in this column to your soul, so herself and the thing she boosts, in order to choose a Genesis from your drop and add it back to your hand. This means several things. First things first, again, as I mentioned, you make this column, you boost with this column, at the end of the battle, they both go to the soul. So that means you have a card you can Soul Blast out for a cost, and you have a Chamomile in your soul that you can use later and call out through an effect. The other thing is that this gets back a Genesis, which means that in the early turns, for the ride deck, I can ditch my Minervas, and then just use this and go like, hey, this is a Genesis, I'm adding back this back to my hand, right? So that's what Rerelim or Rerelim, I don't know how they're gonna translate it yet, but she's called Rererimu in Japanese. That's what makes this card so good. She does like a bajillion things. She's like Eva's grade 1 research order in terms of how much she does for the deck. And it's kind of impressive that they managed to put all these effects into one card and made it just like so insane. Like I think that's the one thing that the D design team has been pretty good at, is that they'll give a deck like 1 or 2 cards of support and they will make them like perfect for the deck. They won't waste their time with like random effects on it, and I feel like they really just knocked it out of the park with this one. Rerelim is just insane, really insane card. And then we are playing more Genesis cards, of course, in order to be able to restand with Minerva, and now we're playing 4 Cider. Now some people choose to play less Cider and instead play maximum Melissa. I personally think Melissa is a bit clunky at times because she only calls to the back row during battle phase, so you kind of have to like Soul Blast her in the main phase. Whereas Cider is really cool because she is a returning Genesis card. So she says at the end of the battle that she boosted, if you have a Minerva Vanguard, you can bounce her back to hand. And when she's put in Guardian Circle, if you have a Genesis, sorry, if you have a Regalia grade 3 in your soul, she gets plus 5k shield for that battle. So she's a 10k shield, which is what makes Eva really strong, right? But she also bounces. This means that you can early aggro with her on turns like 1 or 2, and then after you get to Minerva, you can just boost with her, get her back to your hand, and then ditch her for Minerva's cost as well. And this deck does want to aggro quite a bit, because by aggroing your opponent to 4 early, and that means that the first big battle phase combo you do with Minerva usually wins you games. So I think that Cider is a really good card. Sure, you don't get as much of like the big combo pieces that the deck could have, but I think it's like, regardless, it's really, really good. And then of course we have our PGs. So we have 3 of the regular PG and 1 of the, the Blitz PG as well, that I think every deck wants to run if it doesn't run great form in the main deck. And then for the OT, we're running the blue OT, Idosfaro. Idosfaro, if you haven't seen it before, is the OT that says when checked, the bonus effect is to choose a card from your drop and add it back to your hand. And this deck has a lot of pieces and a lot of parts, like not just personas and PGs, but sometimes it's like a rare limb, like you heal her out and just want to use her, right? And then you can add that back to your hand and then choose a unit and give an extra crit. So this is really good because it's also a lot better than the red OT, because the red OT, I've literally had it checked by a Minerva player on me and I survived because they just like, they swing with 100 million twice, but it's like, it's 1 damage, right? So everything in this deck hits for 1 damage, and you need those extra crits to kind of like raise the pressure of the whole deck. So this being like an extra critical trigger on top of being a piece recycler is really important in Minerva. So you definitely want to play the blue OT, and sometimes just like getting this extra crit effect with 100 million is like, your opponent can't handle 2 Minerva attacks with the 100 mil on them either. So I think it's definitely recommended. For heals, we're just running 4 regular ones. I think with this deck, you don't really have the time. Like, you can get fancy and use a 2-2 split as well of like, the effect heals, which I think depends on your local format. If you have a lot more Gandiva, then you can run the crit ones, but otherwise against Minerva and Willista, you want to run the restand ones. So just judge your local meta, honestly. So just 4 of the regular heals for this deck profile. And then for the crits, we have 4 lovely signed Bang Dream triggers. I sadly don't have a 4th Tomoya sign, but I do have this very beautiful Tsugumi sign as well. So I'm a big Afterglow fan, so you can see that here. And like, Tomoya is a pretty cheap sign as well, so it's actually not that hard to get. And then we're actually not running any effect triggers. We're running 4, just full lineup of the 5k ones, because sometimes you need to put them down as a booster, and also like you can also theoretically boost one of these with your Cider to get her back to hand to ditch for Minerva as well while making decent numbers. So we don't want to mess up our numbers with the effect crits, and like we don't really struggle for soul in this deck because of how it works. So usually it is fine. And finally, 3 draws just to round it out, because it is a piece for line deck, but I think we do need the crits to just like give extra, like extra oomph to our attacks that we're sometimes lacking. So I think the 8 crit 3 draw lineup is pretty good for Minerva. Alright, so now to give you an example for some combos, here we have our board states. We have 3 CB, we have Angelica and Cider that we found from earlier, and of course the Minerva Vanguard with the following soul. So we have a couple of Chamomiles in here. Of course the Rod line is in soul, and then Chamomile as well as the Spiral Cutie Angel. Usually at this stage we'll have a bit more stuff in the soul too, but just for this example it's fine. And our hand is this, right? So we're going to use Rara Limb here in order to call her down, CB1 and Soul Blast 1. We want to Soul Blast something that isn't a combo piece here, so hopefully this Spiral Cutie or something that isn't a, combo part like the Chamomile. And then we get to draw 1 card and then call a card from hand. So I want to call the draw, let's just call down the Seisas. And now Seisas gets to use this effect, look at top 3 and put 1 card to the soul and the rest at the bottom. So only really 1 card we want to put in the soul here is the Cider, so the rest can go to bottom here with the PG and the heal, which is a bit unfortunate. And so here we can now use the effect of our Minerva in order to Soul Blast again a non-combo piece. So let's Soul Blast a starter here, it's pretty safe, to look at the top card of the deck and see if we want to put it to soul. So we don't want to put that to soul. Let's keep the crit on top. It's going to be good for our drive checks. And so now we get into the battle phase. So the battle phase is where things get most complicated. So you have to look at your soul, right? So we still have the Melissa, so we can technically call that Melissa either behind Vanguard or call it to this Cider spot. And we don't have a Genesis in hand here, so we're going to want to call it to that spot instead. So here what we do is we're going to swing with the Angelica, boosted by the Cider. And this is going to be just 21 for now. And at the end of the battle, the Cider is going to bounce back to hand with her own effect. And then we can use the Angelica here in order to CB1 and essentially self-replace her. So she's going to put herself to soul, and then with the bonus effect, we get to also, countercharge 1. So we countercharge 1, but then we immediately want to use that CB to call this Cider out. So now she'll be ready to attack later down the line. Up next, we want to attack with the Seisas, who now has the plus 5k buff from Minerva. So this is going to be 15 on its own, not counting Persona Ride. And after it attacks, we're now able to Soul Blast 1 again, and we want to Soul Blast this Chamomile, and it's going to self-retire itself. And here we can choose to use one of the cards that we want to put it to soul. So there's actually quite a few lines of play you can do. So let's say we put this Minerva into our soul. So it is a, a Genesis piece. It doesn't have to be, but it can be anything. because we don't really have any other good kind of combo parts. And then let this Red Limb stay on standby. So what's going to happen here is that we now did Soul Blast that Chamomile, so we're going to Counter Blast 1 for that Chamomile's effect that we Soul Blasted and call her out here. And now you don't want to do anything else just yet. You want to start swinging with the Vanguard here, who now has plus 10k because she got plus 5 from herself as well as from the Angelica. And we know there's a crit up top, so we're going to get a crit. You know, you can distribute this as you wish. And then second check also a crit. That's pretty good. Did I shuffle this? I hope I did. So whether you put these on your Vanguard or in the rear depends on how your opponent guards, of course. But then we're going to go into the Minerva effect itself to CB1 and Soul Blast 3 cards. So here I want to Soul Blast specifically this Minerva, as well as any other 2 cards, including the Melissa. And also we need to, sorry, still in the resting state. So we discard these, sorry, we Soul Blast these 3 and we have to discard a Genesis, will be the Cider. So these get ditched and then Minerva stands. So now she has her 23 plus whatever you applied from triggers. And now we still have this Melissa to use. So you can choose to either call this behind Vanguard or rear guards. We're going to make this rear guard hit for harder because, you know, if our opponent check defensives, that means our attacks just end. We can choose a Soul Charge and we have little soul, so let's do that. We Soul Charge a heal, it's not the end of the world. And now let's say we're just going to swing with Vanguard again with a single drive. We're going to check it, get nothing, but Red Limb is always appreciated. And now what you can do, which is really nice, is you can swing with this column and use the Red Limb to put this column back into the soul and use Red Limb's effect to get a Genesis back from your drop to your hand. So now the Minerva gets to be added back to your hand, which is really cool. So this way you just took a drop zone Persona Ride that you had, you put it to soul to pay for a cost for your Minerva, and then got it back to hand to Persona Ride next turn, which is really good. And we still have another swing here too. So that was basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks, which is like the average you want to be doing on a big Minerva attack. And including the Red Limb, we used 3 CB there, so do keep that in mind. So now if you want the max attack version of that combo, it's going to look something like this. We have 5 open CB here, which is quite a lot, I know, but let's use Red Limb again as usual to CB1, Soul Blast 1, and again here we can actually Soul Blast out a Chamomile. We can actually get her back in before we need her, and then draw 1, and then basically, I mean, here you even have a choice of what to call. Well, let's say we go with the Sajas, look at top 3. Wow, it's horrible. Who would have thought? Just put this to the bottom. It always hurts. It always hurts. And then, you know, you can use the same soul to Soul Blast 1, look at the top card to check if you want to put it to soul or not, so you can do that. But then we get into the battle phase, and this is how things are going to be going. So we are on Persona Ride. Just to clarify, this is on a Persona Ride maximum output attack combo. I think if you remember my old Nova Grappler combo videos, it's going to be a little bit something similar. So here we're going to want to swing with the Seisas, and this is going to be a 25k rather, because we have a grade 3 in the soul. We're going to use the effect to immediately Soul Blast out a Chamomile and pop it in order to put back a card to soul, so we can put the Chamomile we just Soul Blasted back into the soul, and then use this Chamomile to CB1 and call it out. Then we're going to swing with this column. So this, of course, you can go just on their own. It's going to be 28, which is quite good. And then again, Soul Blast the Chamomile. You get to countercharge and it goes to soul. And then you get to CB that Counter Blast back up to swing again. And now, depending on if you want to check defensives or not, this is, you know, you're going to boost or not boost. So let's say they didn't check defensive, so you can go unboosted. So here you can go 25 and then go again 25. And then moving forward, you can swing with Vanguard, and then on the first swing, you know, you get your twin drive, whatever, we get a crit, very cool. And here you'll notice that we do have the maximum Chamomiles in the soul. So we want to use Minerva's effect here to CB1, and then Soul Blast out the other 2 Chamomiles, as well as, let's say, our Persona Ride, and we still have a grade 3 Regalia in the soul here. So Soul Blast these 3, and we also need to discard one of our Genesis cards. So we can also choose to bounce this before the battle end first before we proc Minerva. So let's say we do that and just ditch this, and then Minerva stands, and then we get to proc both of the Chamomiles in our soul in order to use up our remaining Counterblast to get 2 more attacks out. And so these are going to get overcalled, so they're going to go to the grave, to the drop. And so far we have done 1 rearguard, 2 rearguard, 3 rearguard, 4 rearguard, Vanguard, 5 attacks so far. We're going to go for the 6th here with Minerva. Once again, for a single drive, we get another Persona, great. And then here you go for the 7th attack. This is going to be 25, 33, and then you can use the effect of the Red Limb to now choose a, you know, let's say the Persona Ride and add it back to your hand. And then still swing with this for another 33 for the final attack, and this bounces to your hand. So this also passes pretty well on Gandiva because you don't leave up much of a board. So that's the maximum number of attacks you can do is basically 8. It can go to 9 if you run the Red OT, but I really don't recommend that. So consistently you can do 8, but it does require basically 4 CB that this 5 CB included Red Limb, which like realistically you will be using most of the time. So plan ahead, you know, with that in mind. It also depends on like just Seisas versus Angelica. If you have double Angelica, that saves you CB, but Seisas can also like recover your Chamomiles to be able to do this combo more smoothly without needing all 4 Chamomiles as well. And now for our usual kind of Mulligan perspective tutorial that we always do, let's take a look at what we have. Wow, this is the sole saving grace of this hand is Red Limb, which you must keep. So like your Mulligan, you have to really have her most important over everything. More important than Seisas, more important than Persona Rise, more important than anything else. This card turns on everything. So it's really, really important. So we redraw and we have a pretty good hand. This is actually pretty good. No Personas, but honestly, we're going to get pretty far with this hand. So let's just shuffle up and then get into this little demo game. And again, just kind of assume we go first. If you go second, you can use Minerva's skill. Keep that in mind. It works when your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. So if you don't, you still prefer going first because that helps you build momentum to kind of kill on turn 4, which is important. So let's say we go first here. Okay, wow, this is a great hand. So we expect to use Red Limb early, but we do have the cycle card in hand, so we want to ditch that first in order to ride up. And of course, immediately use the effect to Soul Blast 1 and put this to the bottom in order to draw ourselves a card. So pretty good. We're going first, we can attack, so we're going to just pass and then take a damage, you know, get a Tomoe in here. And then we get our turn, we draw into another cycle card. And this is, again, I'm glad I can show this off because this is exactly the interaction you want to see. So we're going to use the Melissa first to look at top 5 and find 2 cards to put to Soul, one of which we're going to immediately Soul Blast out. So pretty good. We have a Minerva that we can immediately use and get back for our, you know, we can get it back with the Red Limb later down the line, this turn actually. So I think we definitely want to put the Minerva in the Soul and we can Soul Blast out immediately. And I guess Seisas is fine too. I'd rather, you know, find these PGs and stuff and crits, you know, from drive checking / drawing into them. That'd be pretty nice. So we're gonna just do a little shuffle and then these will go to Soul. And now we can use the cycle card we just ditched to actually get rid of this Seisas that we no longer need. We want to keep the Minerva in the Soul just because we can power up our next turn by a little bit. And we're gonna draw an extra card. And as you can see, like it helps to draw into pieces because our hand is non-defensive. It's all pieces basically. And then we do have the 1 CB here, so we can just use the Red Limb immediately, CB1, as well as Soul Blast out. I mean, I guess we're gonna Soul Blast out the Minerva at this point in order to draw a card, and we're gonna call out this lovely Chamomile. So the battle we can get into and swing for 10, sorry. We actually have quite a few siders, so you can theoretically go for a bigger aggro and actually push in first with this 8k, then swing in with a 10, check for the drive check, ooh, another Chamomile, and then swing in with a Red Limb, and then after she attacks, she will put herself to the Soul in order to give you that extra Soul to use, and now you can also get back your Minerva back into your hand to use for Persona Ride later down the line. So we do lose 5k on the first attack of next turn with this play, but it still kind of works out. So we have 1 face down CB, nothing else. We're going to take some damage here. We get a heal. We just aggroed our opponent. Let's just say that's not effective. And then an Angelica. So we have 2 CB, which is kind of like the bare minimum we want for this turn. So like we're not using the Minerva, so we can kind of like keep that in mind. This hand is a bit awkward to discard, but we can actually ditch this Chamomile and then use Seisas this turn a little bit. So here we ride into the Minerva, so we can use the Chamomile effect to look at top 5 and put 2 to Soul. Soul charging with Red Limb kind of hurts because we want her in hand and we have no other way to add her to hand from just like plussing, but Soul is Soul, and I think it's better than Soul charging crit, so we're gonna have to go for that. So that means we just have 1 Red Limb left in the deck to really find, which is, you know, if we find it, it's great, but if not, I mean, it's still going to be an important tool for this game plan. And so here it kind of depends on how much you want to combo, really, but let's say first we're going to be using the Minerva effect to Soul Blast 1 to look at the top card of our deck to see if we want to put it to slow or not. It's a crit, so let's leave it on top. And keep in mind, we don't restand the Vanguard, right? This turn, we don't restand the Vanguard, but we can use Cider to bounce her back. So here, theoretically, we can use a Seisas to do a little bit of combos. We don't want to overcommit because we want to try to like tie that into our next turn. So for example, you can even theoretically attack with an Angelica and then like not put her to Soul here and then choose to just like recycle this column a little bit. So it's a little bit complex, but I think you'll get what I mean once you see it. And you do want to keep pushing, especially as the player that goes first. So let's say we're going to go in with the Angelica. So she's only 13, but at the end of the battle, she's going to be able to Soul Blast 1. So let's Soul Blast a Chamomile and then put herself to Soul to countercharge 1. So now we have 3 open CB, which is excellent. And we can now use the Chamomile to call her right out. And then here now our attacks are going to be 15. So if our opponent didn't hit defensive, you can actually go in immediately with this for 15, and then this can go in again for 15, and now you can use the Seisas here to Soul Blast out, let's say this Chamomile again, in order to pop itself, and now we can put back a Chamomile we Soul Blasted early into the Soul and reuse that like that. and now CB1 again to call out this chamomile, and now we have a 23 here as well. But don't forget there's a 23 Vanguard swing that can't restand, but we can put trigger checks onto this chamomile and then swing in with 33, and then this still bounces back to hand. So now the problem is that after these chamomiles get retired, you're only going to have the one that you have in soul. So you have to be a bit careful with that, and that's why having Redelim throughout the long game is really important. So let's say, you know, they are going to get it retired. Let's say, like, your opponent's usually pretty smart about it, or maybe they'll leave one of them up, right? They're going to give you some damage to the face, and, you know, we heal. Let's say that's effective. So we are on this, you know, 4 damage. Let's say we take another one. It's an Angelica, which is a bit unfortunate because that's our countercharger. And then, you know, let's say we just ate a barrage of attacks. We had to ditch a bunch of cards, you know, to actually try and survive and block against these attacks, and, you know, just try to actually not die on 5. And then we're going to get our turn back. So we get a Seisas, which is cool, but not super useful. So we're going to Persona right here. And oh, the Red Lame off the top. That's super important. So we're going to CB1. We're going to want to put her here to get this card back into our soul. So here, the card to Soul Blast usually is going to be that Minerva in order to keep using that loop of Persona rides you can do. Draw 1, and then you don't have to call this in front, right? You can call the Seisas to the other side, and then use the top 3 skill. I guess you can put the Minerva in the soul. It doesn't really matter too much because we can loop the Persona rides here. And then just for maximum firepower, call out your Siders that will bounce back to hand anyway. We haven't used Minerva's skill just yet, so we can ditch this Redelim in order to look at the top card of the deck. It's a draw. I guess draw is fine. Let's keep that. So now we have 3 open CB. So realistically, we can use 2 chamomiles this turn. So we have to kind of think about that accordingly. So we can use 1 CB for Minerva, 1 CB for chamomile from this, and then 1 CB for chamomile from Minerva, basically, right? So the attack pattern you can do is this swings for 25, and then you're going to use the effect to Soul Blast out the chamomile to basically pop this out, and then you get to choose one of the other chamomiles from the drop and put it back into the soul. So that's very good. Then we're going to CB1 and essentially just use this chamomile, you know, call it out. And then if you want to continue this barrage of attacks without necessarily minusing yourself, you want to swing with this column next. So this is going to be 25 with the AK boost, so 33. And at the end of the battle, it's going to go to soul and get you a Genesis back from your drop into your hand. So let's say we're going to get back the Minerva for a Persona ride later down the line. And now next, you're going to want to swing with the Vanguard circle here. So this is going to be 23 from Persona. We didn't use Angelica. No, we did use Angelica this turn, didn't we? Yeah. So this is what, 28, 33, 41. So it's pretty big. We get our twin drive into the draw that we know about, as well as the OT. Perfect. I mean, we can now kind of use this to, I mean, this probably is a Redelim kind of play. We want to just keep reusing those chamomiles. You can give the 100 mil to the Vanguard, for example, and it's all fine and dandy. Draw an extra card, don't forget about that. Somehow drew into 2 crits, which is interesting. Then in the battle, we can bounce back the Cider and then use the Minerva to CB1 and Soul Blast 3. So we want to Soul Blast out the Chamomile as well as the Melissa that we had, as well as, I mean, you can basically at this point Soul Blast out this Angelica that you can get back later down the line as well as ditching the Genesis card we have in hand, which is that Cider, so that's going to go back down as well. And then we have a standing Vanguard. But don't forget that we Soul Blasted 2 specific cards here, which is the Melissa as well as the Chamomile. So now we can use our last CB in order to call out this Chamomile and Melissa. And now we have a full board again, and we can swing still with the 100 mil and whatever, and get the trigger, put that on there, and basically you just have all of these attacks, and it's pretty fun. Like, it feels like you're playing G-Era a little bit because of how many little decisions and attacks and combos you can do. So honestly, I do recommend it if you like this kind of playstyle. So I hope you enjoyed this look at DBT11 Minerva. It's a very fun deck, honestly, and very cool and combo based, but do keep in mind that sometimes you have games where you just don't draw your pieces, you kind of break and you don't have ways to navigate, and it's also a pretty hard deck to play. So don't beat yourself up if you're making a lot of errors in the early days of playing the deck. It'll take some time to get used to, but if you can execute really well with it, you're gonna have a really good time. Sadly, it feels a bit sacky sometimes because if your opponent hits 1 defensive, all of your attacks start to hit like, you know, wet noodle basically. So have patience with the deck, have patience with yourself, have patience with your opponent if they start hitting mega defensives, because that's just the kind of deck this is. And I hope that, you know, for those like Genesis, Minerva diehards, my demo has been good enough to display what the deck can do, at least on a beginner level. So if you liked the video, please do give it a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I do have a bonus content video for the YouTube channel members of this deck being played in first-person perspective, so do check that out if you're interested. But otherwise, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.